Regrets. I've had a few. All right, if you're honest with yourself as you go through life, you have regrets. Some people say it's not cool to say that you've ever had regrets, but regrets are a part of life, and it's a way we learn, and it's a way we develop and advance ourselves as individuals and as human beings. Now, what I'd like to talk about here, as my compatriots swim in the back, are some of the regrets that I've had since coming to the Philippines. And I've compiled a short list, and actually today is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day everybody, and happy first Mother's Day to my cue card holder. She's actually holding the list of all the things that I'm supposed to talk about. So let's get right into it, shall we? My first regret when coming to the Philippines was buying a Mitsubishi Pajero. When I first came here, I was told, hey, there's a rainy season in the Philippines. It rains like 6 months out of the year. There's monsoons and all kinds of crazy shit. So I'm like, okay, I have to get a car, and I like trucks. So I got a Mitsubishi Pajero 4x4. It was a conversion, it was a salvage. Basically, it was originally Japanese. At some point, they chopped it up, they put it into little pieces, they sent it to the Philippines. They welded it all back together, and everything's reversed. And it is basically the worst vehicle that I've ever owned. I mean, once they start chopping up vehicles and the electrical systems and everything and the way they reassemble things here, it wasn't reliable at all. It had issues from the beginning. And on top of the reliability problems was the fact that I was single and I really didn't need a truck. I mean, if you have a family here, that's one thing. You don't want to be driving your kid around or your baby around on a scooter, so it's good to have a vehicle. Now we have a 2017 Hyundai Tucson CRDI. I absolutely love it. It's not a conversion. It wasn't chopped in half. So the Pajero was regret number one. Speaking of transportation, let's move to number two. My second biggest regret was buying what they call a local unit motor scooter, not once, but twice. I'm not going to say the name brand because I actually know the family that owns and sells these things, so I don't want to make them look bad. But I would have been much better off purchasing a name brand. Right now I have a Honda. I love Honda. I've always loved Hondas. My first motorcycle that I ever rode was a Honda when I was like 12 years old. It was a CR125 dirt bike back in the day. With the local units, and local units are things like Motorstar, Recall, Rusi, that type. Constant electrical problems. You cannot rely on it. I mean, when it comes to transportation, you have to get somewhere. Sometimes it can be a case of life or death. You want to be able to make sure that when you turn the key, it turns on and you can get where you need to go. So that was my second biggest regret, was buying a local unit motor scooter. Third regret, and this was a real emotional thing for me. We were renting a place down in Darwin, and the rental came with two dogs. One of them was a Rottweiler, and one of them was a Bulldog. At the time, I had the Mitsubishi Pajero, and the Bulldog liked to chase the Pajero, and it was it was like a 2,000 square meter yard, so we had to traverse it with the Pajero. And one time, he was chasing it, and I decided to race him a little bit, and I didn't see him, he ran under the front tire, and I hit him, I ran over him. It took him a little time to die. I love dogs, and it was my mistake because I was going too fast. And it's actually a metaphor, if you will, for how not to live life in the Philippines. You don't want to be going too fast. You don't want to be pushing yourself too hard, because when you do that, bad things are going to happen. So you got to slow down, and that's a topic for a whole other video. But that's my third biggest regret, was killing that dog. Fourth biggest regret was not wearing enough protection against sun exposure. If you look back at my videos when I came here about 8 years ago, I had smooth, flawless skin. I had no wrinkles. It was veritable porcelain. I looked like I was 20 years old. Now, after 8 years of sun exposure, I got wrinkles, I'm all mottled, my shit's falling down, I got turkey waddles. So that was a regret. If you see in the video right now, I'm wearing long sleeves and I have sun protection. I have sunglasses over there, even though the sun's not out, and it actually looks like it's going to rain any minute. But when you see Filipinos riding their scooters long distances, or even just going down to the corner store, they got long sleeves on, they got hats, they're completely covered up, they got t-shirts that they convert into those baklavas or whatever, so all you see is their eyes. So as with many things in the Philippines, do what the Filipinos are doing. So I regret not having a sun exposure. Plus, I have something on my nose that I got to get checked out. A friend of mine had something on his nose from sun exposure, and he just found out he had cancer, and he is undergoing treatments for that right now. So I need to go to a dermatologist and get that checked out. So if you come to the Philippines, make sure you're wearing your sunscreen, make sure you got your long sleeves, gloves, hats, everything. All right. Building on top of that is my 5th biggest regret, which is buying cheap sunglasses. You can get cheap sunglasses in the Philippines, knockoffs of any brand, Ray-Ban, anything like that. You can get those dirt cheap for about $1. Now, for that $1, you get basically a pair of sunglasses. What you don't get is UV protection. And I've noticed over the past 8 years that I'm having more difficulty driving at night. My low light vision is getting worse, and I'm only 53, almost 54 years old. So I wish I had invested. These are from the United States. These are from Amazon.com. I'll leave the link to them down in the video description box. I think they're only 20 bucks, and they're fantastic. They're scratch proof, and they have excellent UV protection, and they also have some sort of filter, which makes everything look really cool. Next up, number 6, my 6th biggest regret is not quitting smoking. Smoking is a young man's game. Every time I go to the United States, I quit smoking. About a month, 2 months after I come back, I start smoking again because it's expensive in the US. It's not expensive here. Plus I get bored easier here. So I start smoking. Like I said, it's a young man's game. I'm starting to feel it. I go to the gym, when I start working out, my cardio can't keep up. So this time when I go back to the United States, hopefully in September, I will quit and stay quit, because I have a daughter now, I have a wife. It's not just all about me, and I gotta be there for them. Regret number 7 is trusting foreigners. I'm not gonna get into the details, but before I came here, somebody told me, Ned, the problems that you're gonna have in the Philippines aren't gonna be with Filipinos, they're gonna be with other foreigners. And truer words have never been told. I actually trusted a couple foreigners with some personal information of mine, and they violated that trust, and it wasn't a big deal, but if you're gonna be friends with people, you're gonna be able to trust them, and that they violated that trust wasn't cool. So I regret trusting a few foreigners here. Number 8, my number 8 biggest regret is not buying Bitcoin in March. It crashed down to about 4,000, 5,000 bucks per coin. I was sitting having breakfast with somebody, and this was right before the lockdown, and I said, I am going home right now, and I'm gonna go buy 2 Bitcoin. You know, because I've never had Bitcoin before. I got home and I totally spaced it. I didn't buy the Bitcoin, and now what? It's worth $58,000. I finally did buy some a while back, and I wish I had done it back in March. So that's a purely selfish financial regret. Regret number 9. My first dog that I had here was named Angel. She was actually basically at that point she was a street dog. I smuggled her into the yard. I lured her into the yard with chicken bones, and she became my dog. Took really good care of her, loved that dog. But she got older, she got sicker, her health was deteriorating, and it got to the point, she had cancer, she also had breast cancer, and I had talked to the vet about putting her down, but I waited too long, and we woke up one morning at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was crying. I went outside, she was in the bushes, she couldn't move. She was basically non-responsive, so I had to go get the vet, and he had to come and put her down, and I wish I had done it sooner. I also cried like a baby when she finally went down, and a lot of that was from the guilt of not having put her down sooner, so she didn't have to suffer that night in the bushes alone. I think we're up to number 10 regret. My number 10 regret is involving myself and listening to expat drama. This is a reiteration of when you come here, you're not going to have problems with Filipinos, you're going to have problems with other foreigners. I'm not going to get into the details on this one, but I just don't have time for drama. It's not good for you, it's not physically good for you, it's not spiritually good for you. You lose connection to yourself, you lose connection to other people, and you don't want to be one of those gossiping little bitches getting involved with stuff like that. Number 11, I think number 11 regret is not getting an inverter air conditioner sooner. I know this is a first world regret, but ever since I got the inverter air conditioner, I absolutely love it. It's a split type. I think the price is for 1 horsepower is down to like 16,000 pesos now, which is dirt cheap. We're about to get another one for our bedroom. It saves money, it's much more efficient, and I wish I had done it earlier. And again, this is a first world regret, and I think I'm running out of regrets, so that's why I have that one listed. All right, regret number 12 was building a NEPA roof on our carport. When we first moved into the house, the carport was not covered. The concrete was heating up to, I'm not exaggerating, to about 120, 125 degrees Fahrenheit. It was radiating into the house. So I asked the landlord if we could do something about that. So we built a NEPA carport cover. It was basically a NEPA roof. It worked really well. The shade was really good. The only problem with NEPA is you need to maintain it, you need to replace it, and bugs love it. And I think that's probably the reason I got dengue, was because there was so many mosquitoes from the NEPA. We recently tore down the NEPA roof. We put up an insulated metal roof. There's no more bugs, no more issues like that. You don't have to replace it. It works really well. So that's regret number 12. And again, it's not a huge regret, but I'm running out of regrets, so there's that. And finally, and like I said, we're running out of regrets. Regret number 13, and there's some other ones, but they're a little personal, so I'm not going to get into those. But final regret number 13 was not insulating our house rental ceiling earlier. About 2 years after we moved in, we insulated the ceiling with 10mm polystyrene with a thermal gradient barrier on one side. It drastically cut down the heat inside the house. If you're going to be going to a place, if you find a really nice house rental and you have a good landlord and he's willing to pay for it, usually what we do is we pay for the improvements and then he just deducts it out of our rent. So if you find a good place, you want to do some improvements, and the polystyrene, I think it costs less than $100. Again, it's just 10mm thick. You lay it on top of your ceiling, so you got to go up into the crawl space. Hire a Filipino for that, because it's hot up there. And for less than $100, you're going to cut down on a lot of heat. You're going to save money with electricity for your air conditioning and all that. Okay, so those are 13 regrets that I've had in the Philippines. There are some others. But enough about me. What are your regrets about your time in the Philippines? If you have some, feel free to leave them down in the comments section. Like, subscribe, share, do all that shit. Until next time, puppies, rainbows, unicorns, and very few regrets for all. See you next time on My Philippine Dreams. How do I look, okay? Yeah. Fourth biggest regret. Hey, if you consider our work to be of any value, consider supporting us on Patreon. If you're a Patreon, you get a free copy of my ebook, and we do monthly Google Hangouts. So consider doing that, if you would please.